I'm really looking forward to this next session, folks, because yesterday when we did the opening, I kind of introduced the fact that I'm a brand futurist, so I'm not actually really here. I'm actually a hologram from next year's conference. So this part's going to be really interesting because technologies like AR, VR, and mixed reality have opened a world of possibilities. But there's lots of tech for tech's sake out there. The heart of the campaign, however, is always great storytelling. The key to getting results is bringing together strategy, technology, and design to solve problems and bring ideas to life, creating memorable experiences that deliver deeper audience engagement. As managing director and co-founder of Method, award-winning creative innovations agency, our next presenter has over 18 years' experience in digital and innovation. She's on the board of the NZVR-AR Association, a member of the AR-VR Garage, which is a collaboration that's brought people together to scale up and win global projects. Please welcome from New Zealand, Samantha Ramlu.
I guess the thing is, we're probably looking at this from a slightly different angle today to the other speakers. I'm looking at it from more of a creative angle. Definitely at the moment, AR and VR is a bit of a trend. But I guess what we're looking at is a way to kind of amplify it and use it in the right way. So it's not just a novelty and it's not just tech for tech's sake. You can create something quite compelling with it and reach your audience quite well. On that note, I just wanted to do the obligatory audience survey of how many people have heard of augmented reality and virtual reality. Which is pretty good. And how many people have actually tried maybe augmented reality? And virtual reality? Cool. Have you guys heard of mixed reality? And has anyone tried mixed reality? No. Cool. So kind of the first thing I wanted to do was do a little bit of definition of all of them as well. So we've got a good idea of the differences between the three and then all the other things that come around it. And essentially, I guess what I'm calling is our new reality in digital. The first thing is, how many different realities are there? There's obviously real life, and then what we get into with all of these. So augmented reality, I'm sure pretty much everyone here would be familiar with Pokemon Go, whether you've played it or not. And while it wasn't true AR, it's done a really good job in kind of getting augmented reality out there into the public realm. Augmented reality's been around for maybe 10 to 15 years, but it's only just become more popular. So when we talk about augmented reality, we're talking about the real world overlaid with virtual objects. And those virtual objects can be anything from text, graphics, video, sound, and games. So interactive or just visual. And then when we talk about virtual reality, we're talking about a completely immersive and interactive experience. So you're in a completely different world. You've got a headset on typically, and the content is delivered through the headset. So you're in a virtual world, whereas augmented reality, you can still see the real world around you. Then we have mixed reality, and you're going to start to see more and more of this if you've heard of HoloLens or Magic Leap. And it's very similar to augmented reality in that you're seeing items augmented into your real world, but what's happening is you're viewing it through glasses. So they're on your face, they're closer to you, so it actually looks like it's happening in your real world. And then this often gets lumped in with virtual reality, and it's very similar, but 360 video is different. So it's usually taking video of a real environment, and you can watch that through a virtual reality headset, or you can also watch it on YouTube or Vimeo, etc. Facebook are doing, everyone's got ability to do it. And where I guess it becomes virtual reality is when you start to augment items onto your 360 video. You can start putting 3D graphics on there, text, narrative, etc. to create a story. And the last one here, which doesn't often get mentioned within this, but projection mapping is a really, it's an example of spatial augmented reality. So it's augmenting items onto large objects or surfaces. But I think it's also got some great uses, museums and exhibitions, and has a really great way of telling that story. I also just want to quickly look at, I know, there's a lot happening already with AR, VR, and MR, but what does the future look like for these devices? Part of the problem we've got is a lot of people don't have the devices at home. You're more likely to have a mobile phone, which helps with augmented reality a lot, but virtual reality, not a lot of people would have the headsets at home. And different types of virtual reality means you can go to $4,000 or $5,000 for a full kit with a gaming machine and a headset. So it's really unlikely that a consumer is going to have this. So this is what we're starting to see coming up in AR, and it's happening a bit now. And I can show you guys some examples later on. We're looking at augmented reality is starting to recognize surfaces. So I'll go through a little bit of the detail, but you can start to see people like Apple and Google having this native to their phones. So you're going to start to see some native apps come out that can run augmented reality rather than having to download a separate app. I don't know if this is a reality so much, but you can see how it's starting to recognize the environment. So you'll be able to place objects and they're going to recognize the environment around them. This is what's out at the moment in the corner there, is what Magic Leap have just brought out. And you can see it's a really attractive pair of glasses. On the other side, there's a hard drive sitting there. So it's not the most elegant solution at the moment. No one's going to be walking around, and everyone remembers the freaky old Google Glass and what they did with that. This is what they're touting as becoming our reality. You've got a headset on and you can augment items in front of you. The actual reality is, at the moment, the field of vision is very narrow. So you're not seeing it in a space like that, but I guess that's what we're all working towards. So this is the HoloLens, Microsoft HoloLens, that's got this happening, but again, the field of view isn't the same. So we're seeing a lot of sort of enterprise solutions at the moment, not so much consumer-based, but internal, business to business. We can start to see diagrams, give feedback together, look at stuff visually. And I guess this is what we're working towards, or not us, but what they're working towards instead in terms of hardware development. We got to something like this point where it's a lot more accessible, easy to wear, and friendly as well, without again kind of being the creepy Google Glass where you can look at someone and figure out all their details. So what I wanted to kind of go through today is breaking down augmented reality and virtual reality and all the different facets that it covers and what it means, etc. So there's, in VR, you can get lean back experiences. And when we talk about lean back experiences, it's very similar to a movie. You sit back, you put on the headset, and you're watching something. There are interactive experiences in VR as well. So this is something we did for the Salvation Army to give people an insight into what poverty looks like in New Zealand, and how it isn't always easy to see. But this is an example of something you could put in a headset and actually make interactive, so people could watch and interact with items to find out more information. It's working really well at the moment for live streaming, So one thing, and I think I'd cover it later on, is really important is with VR that we don't want to replace that experience. The idea is that we want to enhance it or bring people to it who may not necessarily always be able to view it. So live streaming is becoming really popular, where you're kind of up there with the band, watching it from that point of view for people who can't make it to concerts. And haptic feedback is something that's been used as well for some of the more extreme experiences. And this means, depth of kind of feel. So you can have a seat that's got haptic feedback included. So as you're experiencing it, it's kind of like 4D theatre. You can kind of feel the seat moving and stuff's happening. So it gives that depth of immersion. And locomotion. Of course, when VR first came out, there were a whole lot of roller coaster experiences. And I don't know if anyone's tried any of them, but you definitely wanted to have a bucket next to you when you did it, which is kind of the worst thing to do in VR. The problem with this is that your body isn't moving and your brain thinks it's moving. So this is where motion sickness comes into play. So with locomotion, the way we treat this in VR is just how we start to treat people and how we do movement through VR. So we treat it really, subtly. We normally put people on a swivel chair when they try in VR, so your whole body's moving rather than just your head, which is where you might become sick. And so if anyone's experienced VR and they've felt a bit sick, that's not always how it should be experienced. So I think one of the things that I wanted to mention as well is I'm guessing there's probably been a lot of bad experiences in VR that people have tried. So if you get if you get all the nuances right, you can create some really compelling stories. And field of view, so you'll hear me talk about this, and this essentially just means what are you seeing in VR. So when you're just standing there normally and looking, you've got your peripheral vision as well. So a lot of VR devices kind of look here. And it may not be immediately obvious, but once you start to expand that field of view, it does feel much more natural at what you're seeing. So when it comes to VR and storytelling, I kind of just want to go through some points of how you can bring these stories to life and what you might want to do that. One of the things, and I talked about 360 versus true virtual reality, and I think what's happening at the moment is you might find a lot of 360 experiences that you're viewing. One, they're not very clear, they might be a little bit blurry. And 2, you might just see someone's essentially just plonked a camera down in the middle of an experience, an environment, and captured that and put it into a VR headset. Now, I guess this is where it's really important that, that by itself, it's like anything. It's like just taking video of something without the editing, without a story around it, it's going to fall flat. Whereas if you build a kind of bigger story around it, you can create something a lot more compelling. So, like everything we've heard this morning, it all boils down to your objectives. Knowing what your audience wants, what are you trying to get across, and what experience might be the best to get across. So, being true to the medium. Is it 360 that you need to do, or is it an interactive animated piece? One of the examples of something we've done is for Nespresso is going through, and we didn't film it, but we edited the final piece, and the film was essentially showcasing growers in all the Nespresso regions and being able to take the customer through that journey. It's not something they'd normally be able to do. And I guess if you think about, what might form a typical sort of brand video, it's taking it to that next level and being able to put people into that headset and going, here you are with the growers, and what we're doing here is Nespresso. And I mentioned it before, so with 360 video, again, you can enhance it by putting facts and figures and narrative over the top. So graphics all help to communicate that story. Some of examples we've done, here's something we did for QMS when they launched their new Auckland Britomart billboards, and the idea was to showcase to ad agencies and media agencies how Britomart's such a great place to advertise. So the problem with getting agencies down there to experience it, we had to go through Auckland Transport. It was really difficult to bring everyone down to a train station and get them to actually look at this. So we took it to them. We've 360 videoed the environment at different points where the billboards appear. We've put a narrative around it as to what audience they're more likely to reach, what the cut through is, some of the facts and figures. And QMS did a roadshow around New Zealand, and I think in Australia as well, showcasing this to media agencies. So it saved a lot of time, and effort for them in terms of agencies being able to see this. Something similar we've done for a film studio set in Auckland that was built on the back of the Meg. I don't know if anyone's watched that movie yet. And so the idea here was to showcase what a great location Auckland is for filming. And so we've filmed around the set, showcasing the different light studios, hard sets. They've got a deep ocean dive pool as well. And there's information and narrative in here that can be taken to Hollywood producers and directors and saves them having to come down. So just a couple of different applications there, instead of just putting the camera down and filming. With anything, it's kind of getting those objectives right, but also being authentic. It's really important. I know there's a lot of, this trend tech for tech's sake and the trends that are out there. But I guess if you are authentic through what you're doing, what emotion are you trying to evoke with the audience? That's going to come through in the content you're doing, rather than just sort of copying what someone else has done or looking at something and jumping on that bandwagon. With something like this, for example, this lemon hurtling down to earth, the idea with this is a very entertaining story, something a little bit entertaining for kids and adults alike. And some of the stuff we got out of this is the element of surprise in VR. Things are coming kind of at this angle, and using sound to kind of amplify that and getting people kind of that wow factor. And creating a journey is really, really important in storytelling. So what we did with this example here, we've called it the Future View, and it's something we developed for Torrens University. Now, one of the insights that came out of a workshop we did with the university is that students don't actually know what they want to study. They don't know necessarily what career they want to do, what path they want to go down. We kind of tagged on to that and decided to create a personality profiler in VR. So the idea is that you go through a series of questions. It's only a 3-minute experience. We don't want to keep people in here too long because essentially it was a marketing activation. But the idea is that as you go through the series of questions and you answer them, the experience will detect what personality type you are. So you can be a creator, a thinker, a doer, organizer, and it's linked to some principles that people boil down to one of 6 personality traits in terms of careers. So at the end of it, what we do show, and you're more than welcome to come and try it, is at the end we show what personality trait you fit into best and what careers and courses that might link to. So what you get in the VR experience are the careers that you might get. So for example, for organizer, I think it's like programmer, accountant, and editor. things like that. And so what you do afterwards is create a full loop. We give everyone who's gone through experience a tarot card with their personality profile in there, so they can take that away and look at all the different courses that are available. And it opens up courses that they may never have considered. You might think that a creator just inherently links to the creative industry, the marketing industry, but there's actually there's courses in there that you can do in health and other business courses that can help bring that creativeness out of you. So it's that full journey from start to finish. We've gone from what we do with this experience is we grab your details, we grab your name, your email address, then you go into the experience, and at the end of it, we know which personality traits you got. You get given the tarot card, which gives you a prompt to go and talk to a careers advisor at Torrens, and you get an email follow-up that follows that up, and you're able to share that as well. So get your consumers, get your customers coming on that journey with you. You can actually create an experience that uses all 5 senses, and so make it fully immersive. Make it as immersive as you can. You can create, feel, as I talked about with haptic, smell and taste. And yeah, that sounds extravagant, but there are ways to do that really nicely. So with an espresso example, for instance, we put them in the experience, they were taken there with the growers, and at the end of the experience, they took off the headset and there was a coffee waiting for them. So that whole time they could smell the coffee, it could bring the experience to life, and it wasn't hard. We had coffee makers there, it was all part of the full experience. So it's a really nice surprise and delight when you take off the headset, and there's a nice cup of coffee there waiting for you, and that whole time you've been able to smell it, wondering what's going on. The one thing though with that is don't compromise. The basic things with VR is visual and sound. So if you at least get those components right, your story will come to life. Don't go down the trick of we should add taste to it and go down a tricky path when actually the 2 senses would be enough. Sound is also really, really important in VR. What we found, and this is just by trial and error, is we've created VR experiences where there was narrative for a full 3 minutes. And actually it's quite overwhelming. When you're in VR, you'll notice that, because it's still a new experience, people are still looking around, they're taking in the sights, you're surrounded by it. There's no way to escape it. When you're watching a video, you've kind of got the video in front of you, you've got the real world around you. With VR, you're fully immersed. So when you're fully immersed like that and your eyes, eyesight's going from one place to the other, it's really important that sound plays a complementary part, complementary role rather than overtaking. We don't ever want to replace the actual experience. The idea is to enhance it and add value. So I know, what's happened a lot is people talking about how they may never, people saying that you may never have to travel again because VR takes you there. I look at it completely different. The idea is that you'll be able to showcase places where people may never think of going, and it's going to excite you and get you, ready to go there. So consider that when you're creating an experience or thinking about an experience. For example, being able to take a test drive of a car. The idea is maybe you get a bit of a glimpse of that, and then you can actually go and do the test drive, or you're more interested in it. So it's just like online shopping and online research that people are doing. And I think I've probably said this a few times, but content is really, really key. The novelty will only get you so far. In saying that, it is pretty novel still at the moment, so there is definitely room for, we're getting press on things, or people are getting press on things that are novel. But what happens is that once you've experienced it, the experience afterwards falls flat a little bit. You get excited by the hype and you try something in VR or AR, and if the content's not there, you're not going to be engaged for as long as they want you to be, or after the experience as well. One thing VR does really well is it can, we can't underestimate its ability to educate. So experiences in VR are seen to be much more memorable, and the facts and the content in VR are seen as being much more memorable than just standard experiences. It's mainly because you're fully immersed in it. It's a singular experience, so you're more likely to remember the facts and figures that are coming out of it. So we're seeing this used a lot in education and training. This was a really interesting piece that was done about looking at it from a refugee's point of view. So this is a VR experience, animated experience that actually takes you on a journey on a boat with these refugees, and there's just a conversation going on. And it's just being able to be in that experience and being there right at that time that makes you kind of take the information in. And then linked really nicely to that is that VR is a really great empathy generator. So if you ever want to put someone in someone else's shoes, this is a great way to do it. You are fully immersed, and you don't have to do it from a first-person point of view. As an espresso one, for example, you could actually look at it from a grower's point of view. It felt like you were really there. So it really gives a really in-depth experience of that. And what we often see a lot is we get briefs that kind of go, oh, can we create this in VR? And it's a real-life example of something, or we're just imitating life. Which is also fine in different examples, but the great thing about VR is you can do the impossible. So we can put you on the moon if we want. You saw something a bit earlier, let me see if I can go back. I don't know if you can see that very well, but this is a wetter, and what we've done is we've shrunk you down, and you're in the middle of a New Zealand native forest, and you're looking up at this giant wetter. So it's a really great way of bringing that New Zealand forest to life, getting that knowledge to life. So we can do the impossible. Don't shy away from doing that. I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to speed through this one a little bit quickly. Augmented reality has a lot of similar aspects as VR does. What I wanted to just quickly explain is some of the different types of augmented reality. So we have what we call marker-based, and essentially what that does is using your phone, you can look at a picture, and it initiates augmented reality, looking at an image or text, QR code, for example, all the same thing. This is an older form of augmented reality, but it's essentially just using the camera from a computer to do that. Then there's location-based AR or markerless AR. And what that does is links to geolocation and can bring things to life using that. So we've created an augmented reality tourism walking tour for a New Zealand local iwi, which is a Māori tribe. And we've created an experience where we can see history come to life through that. And it doesn't involve any markers at all. It's all based on location. So if you walk to a certain area, a different experience comes to life there. And of course, wayfinding is a really great way to do that as well. And then there's projection-based AR as well. So I don't know if you guys have ever seen any of this at children's museums or something similar, but it's essentially projecting down onto what is just sand, but it's giving it textures and stuff. So it creates a really great experience for kids. Then there's superimposed AR. I'm sure you guys might have seen examples of BBC putting you with the polar bears, and essentially what you're doing is sitting on a stand and there's nothing around you, but what's happening on a screen in front of you is a whale's next to you or a polar bear's next to you or something similar. So that's what we call superimposed AR. I used to poo-poo it a lot, but we actually experienced it with my 4-year-old, and it's really, really cool. So again, with augmented reality, you can bring it all to life. So again, what's happened with QR codes is typically a lot of people have that go to their website or initiate a video. We can go deeper than that. So sound effects, background music and sound, animations, 3D, text, video, you can use all of that to bring it to life. And you don't need to use all of it. You can use some of it. Movement, narration, surprise, doing something out of the ordinary. I guess again, linking in with VR, you can do things that aren't normal, everyday life that you see in everyday life. So you can create some really unique experiences from that. Things like this as well, some practical uses. So you can kind of see how she's wearing a t-shirt, but you could do that with paper and, educate, bring things to life that way, dig deeper. So we're looking at engineering companies, looking at how to show how waterworks works underneath the ground level. So using real environments and real items, which link into marker. So this is marker-based AR to enhance that story. I don't have time to go through this, sorry, but I was going to go through sort of a concept to creation, how we go through a VR project, but I won't. I don't think I've got time for questions, but if anyone wants, I'm just outside the door there. If anyone wants to come and try some augmented reality and virtual reality, please feel free.